Welcome aboard! We will be your guides during this magical journey into the movies. It's the perfect job for us because we love the movies. It's showtime! Ready when you are, CB!
Action!
Welcome to Monoreel Radio, episode number 328. I'm Sean.
And I'm Jackie.
And we are here this week to review and discuss Moana 2.
What? Our listeners are sitting here going, what now? You did what?
We sure did.
So, full disclosure, we like to plan out our episodes ahead of time, and we had an open week in the schedule. So our options were either Moana 2 or Mufasa, because we didn't get to review them back in January when we typically do all of the big theatrical releases from the year prior. They were not on Disney Plus yet. So between the two of them, we didn't really feel like watching Mufasa again. So we went with Moana 2.
Yeah, this was one of the rare instances where Disney put out a film that we did not see in movie theaters. To say the least, we have sort of a spotty history when it comes to Moana.
I feel like recently on the show, we're just like, we don't like Moana. We don't like Moana. We don't like Moana. But I feel like that does merit some clarification because it's not so much the movie. It's more the character, because we find her a little whiny, a little stubborn, a lot stubborn. But I went back and I listened to our review, and I realized we weren't as harsh on the film overall as I thought that we might have been. I think the big thing with us is that this film sort of felt like such of a letdown because we were in Hawaii on our honeymoon the year that it came out in 2016. In fact, our anniversary is November 12th. We went to Hawaii for a week and a half. We came back the night before Thanksgiving and then saw it that weekend. So we're back all hyped up, not just from our trip, but because we went to Aulani, they were doing heavy promotion for this film. So we were like, this is just like an extension of the honeymoon. This is great. And because we didn't love the character so much, and there were some issues that we had with the story, it just wasn't our favorite, which was disappointing because we love the animation so much. I think that's the biggest thing that I struggle with, is that the film is so gorgeous. I want to rewatch it for the animation, but I just don't like the character enough where I want to sit through it.
Well, now that we've been through the second Moana film, has the character grown on us? Has the character grown at all? Do we think that this could be a it's going to be a trilogy because money. Or do we think that the franchise at this point has more or less run its course? That, on top of many other things, is what we are here to discuss today.
This episode is sponsored by Fierce Fox Co., designers of handmade silkscreen shirts. Fierce Fox has a t-shirt, tank top, hoodie, or crew neck for every fandom. So whether it's the movies or theme parks, princesses or villains, the MCU or Star Wars, everyone will find something they love. The designs range from subtle quotes from our favorite films to iconic characters we can wear proudly in so many different styles, such as sketchbook and concert tees. Listeners of Monoreel Radio can get a 20% discount using the code Monoreel at checkout. Visit fiercefoxco.com to check out all of the collections.
Moana explores islands near Motunui, hoping to find other villages connected to the ocean. Her ancestor, Tautai Vosa, visits her in a vision and asks her to find the island of Matufatu. We learn that a power-hungry god named Nalo sunk the ancient island to separate the cultures and have almighty power. Moana sees the fire in the sky that her ancestors send for her, and she decides to go on her journey to find the ancient island. She builds a crew, sailing with craftswoman Lotto, historian Moni, and farmer Kele. Maui is also pursuing Nalo, following a previous confrontation, but is captured by Mantagi. Meanwhile, the shooting star that Moana is following explodes, and their ship gets caught in the current before being captured by the Kakamora, who we learn was also separated from society thanks to Nalo. They work together to defeat a monstrous clam inside of Matangi's lair. While the crew finds Maui, Moana meets Matangi, who reveals that she isn't happy working for Nalo. She helps reunite Moana with Maui, who warns her that she and her crew will die, as Nalo's powers are too much for a mortal to survive. Nalo sends a monster to fight the team. It damages their boat and leaves them stranded on a remote island. Moana begins to doubt herself, but Maui encourages her to keep trying to fulfill her destiny. The crew repairs the ship, and they set off so Maui can raise the island for Moana to touch in order to break Nalo's curse. That is the only way that it can be done. They are caught in a giant storm, and as Maui uses his hook to raise the island, Nalo strikes him with lightning, stripping him of his demigod powers. Moana dives beneath the water and touches the island, however, she is killed by one of Nalo's lightning bolts. Maui finds her body and uses a magical chant, bringing forth her ancestors, including her deceased grandmother, who revived Moana as a demigoddess, which provides her with a Wayfinder tattoo. Maui's powers are restored, and he raises the island, helping Moana reconnect the people with the ocean and bring all the cultures together. So, this plot, in terms of how I write plot out, as a little behind the scenes, more times than not, if I'm going to go over a plot, it's 2 full pages. And that's the abbreviated version, 2 full pages. If the plot's a little thin, maybe a page and a half. This plot consisted of 1 page. So it is literally half of what I usually write. And I think that that's worth discussing early on. Because, you know, I can only speak for myself, and I'm not trying to spoil my review here. But I watched it the first time, and I went, okay, I see where they're going here. Maybe I'll pick up some more the second time through. You know, that's not totally uncommon. And I watched the second time, and I went, you know, I didn't get as much the second time through as I had hoped that I would. And you had brought up something very interesting to me right as we were sitting down to discuss the episode, or discuss the film for the purpose of this episode. And I think that after what you told me based on your research, it kind of provides a little more clarity as to why I feel the way that I feel when it comes to how the film kind of lays itself out.
Yeah, I think it's important to note this up front because it is going to play a lot into our review. Because I felt the same way. When I watched it the first time, I remember getting the end and I was like, what happened? Like, the plot is it's straightforward and simple, but I'm like, I just didn't get it. And I was hoping that, you know, usually we'll watch something a second time and I'll see something new, or, you know, because you've already been through it once, you can pull out a deeper understanding because you know what's coming, so you can pay attention to more of the details. And then I did the second time with my notes, and I was like, why do I feel like I still just don't know what happened in this movie? And it's odd because a lot of it sort of retreads the first one. And there was one big thing that stood out to me was that Clements and Musker, who were behind the original in 2016, did not work on this one. And they are the hit makers behind The Little Mermaid, Princess and the Frog, Hercules, Aladdin. The list goes on and on. Like, this is creme de la creme of Disney storytelling. And I was like, okay, they were not behind this. And it showed, and maybe that's what I'm not jiving with. Maybe without their leadership and their storytelling, that's where there feels like a disconnect between A and B. So I knew that going into my second viewing. What I had forgotten, and it wasn't until just before we sat down that I realized, the reason that they were not brought back for this film was because this one started out as the TV series. And then they scrapped it and decided to make it a theatrical release. And I feel like, you know, in certain ways, that is how the first one plays out, because you have like all of the different beats, like with Maui stealing the heart of Te Fiti, and then the Kokomora, and then the giant crab, the shiny crab. I can't even remember his name. So like it does feel like a bunch of vignettes that are woven together, and it works just by virtue of she's a voyager. She's going to all of these different settings. So you have that again here, but I feel like they tried to thread all those vignettes together and it's just not adding up. So I'm hoping that as we talk through it, we're going to figure out exactly what we're bumping on, because I still don't really know how I feel.
Yeah, I think knowing that, it answers a lot of the questions that I had. As you previously stated, we didn't love Moana as a character in the first film. I thought that a lot of what they tried to do with her was very forced. I think when you need to try so hard to tell us that she's a strong character, she's not really that strong. You shouldn't have to tell us so many times. You didn't have to do it with Ariel. You didn't have to do it with Jasmine. I don't think that you necessarily are doing Moana any service by having to pump her up as often as you do. It's like when we used to watch American Idol, and there was always like that one contestant who was no better than the rest, but they kept giving them the American Idol moment where you could tell that the production value was a little bit better. The camera work was a little bit more sophisticated. That's like when you try that hard, it's an easy way to turn an audience against a character. And I was sort of hoping that that would be undone here. The one thing that I think Moana, the first film, did really well was I think that there was a lot of heart in that story.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that there was a lot of meaningful symbolism that was very tactfully handled. And I think that a lot of that kind of went away here, which is not uncommon in sequels in general. Because we already know who these characters are. We're building on their stories. But usually what that means is when you introduce new villains, when you introduce new secondary characters, we start to learn a lot about them. We don't know a damn thing about Nalo, who has hardly any screen time in this movie. I don't think we get an awful lot of time with the crew that she builds. I don't think we get an awful lot of time with some of the new people of Montanui that we're being introduced to. So, all of that to be said, it makes sense. As I'm watching it twice, I'm sitting here going, why are we not spending enough time with this villain? Disney villains are, some of the most revered characters in cinema. Why are we not spending enough time with these characters? Why are we not falling in love with these background and secondary characters? It happens by the handful in Frozen. It happens by the handful in Beauty and the Beast, right? And so you're like, what is missing here? The fact that this was meant to be a television show that sort of got squashed together. It's not that there's not a story here. There's a very clear beginning, there's a clear conflict, and there's a clear conclusion, I think. But it doesn't feel like cinema.
Like you feel the mashup.
I think that if you told me, hey, we're going to binge watch the Moana series on Disney Plus, and I saw this, I'd be like, yeah, makes sense.
I actually do think it would have worked better as a series.
Yeah.
With isolating all of these new things that we are introduced to. I want to circle back to something that you said about what we bumped on about the original and where I think there was room to expand upon it here. And that's the relationship with her father. Because one thing that we were very critical of is that you have two equally stubborn characters sort of in a deadlock. And while that makes for good conflict, the dialogue was sort of one-dimensional in the original, in that I want to go in the water. Why can't I sail past the reef? No. Why? Because no. And that was something that frustrated us a lot. And here, you could have really built upon that, especially because, you know, they were going to make her, they were prepping her to become chief in the first one. So now that she's earned her father's respect, she proved that she could do it. She made her people voyagers again. She saved them because they were going to starve to death because, you know, their land wasn't producing crops anymore.
Right.
You know, it's a good jumping off point that now they have to sort of work together, even though they see things in different ways. And I wish that that was sort of the heart of the movie, because I feel like it would have grounded it more. So now, like, let's actually get into the film. I love off the rip this age appropriate glow up for Moana.
Yeah.
You know, she's a couple of years older. Noticeably in the animation, they gave her a little bit more muscular arms, which I think is so fitting because, you know, she's got to move the sails. So she's going to put on some muscle. Subtle, but so well done. You know, they didn't make her completely ripped, but noticeable. What stood out to me more than anything else, you know, like I said, one of the things that I do really love about the first one is the animation. I did not think that there was room for improvement because it's already so perfect and stunning, and somehow they managed to outdo themselves. Her hair is so detailed. It looks like you can reach out and touch it. I don't know how they did it. I don't know what they did. It is unbelievable how incredible her hair looks.
The colors, the depth of the entire set really are spectacular. And I think we picked up with her in a reasonable spot. You know, she's become a very skilled wayfinder. I didn't find that to be repetitive, that she's still exploring and trying to expand on her world. I think the whole notion that she is trying to continue to traverse the ocean to find more culture, to find more people, to find more villages, to bridge the gap, it's so her. I think she does a great job of crossing the reef, restoring the heart of Te Fiti, saving her people for her first adventure. I think to expand on that and to make her a true leader, where it's like, okay, now I have to bridge the gap and we need to find more people and we need to build out from here and become a larger society. I think going that route for her was the perfect means of growing the character a little bit more.
Absolutely. I buy it. I mean, that was the whole point, right? I mean, part of it was you have to break the curse. You have to restore the heart of Te Fiti. The ocean chose you to do this. You know, her grandmother instilled that in her. This was a necessity to save her people. But as far as her character arc, that was the whole point. She wanted to go beyond the reef. So I totally buy that now she wants to take that even further and explore other islands and other cultures that are out there. What I bump on, though, is that I feel like we don't have enough development for this homesickness, because she couldn't wait to leave. And we're going to break down the songs once we get through the story part of it. But for the purpose of making this point, we have this opening number that's all about going back and missing home. And it works as a good reset for everybody else, I think, because, you know, we're establishing that the island is prospering now. They're able to farm. The crops are good again. You know, everybody recognizes Moana as this amazing wayfinder. But I really don't necessarily buy that she can't wait to get back. You're allowed to be homesick, of course. You can miss your family, sure. But this was what you signed up for and what you fought for. So that's where I feel like it's a little bit of a regression. What I'm also a bit confused about was that one of the things that we were very critical of in the original is that she was being promoted to chief. And we were like, why at such a young age? Like, obviously, you know, they're going to have to prep you and train you to follow in your father's footsteps. But we were like, she's still so young. She's a teenager. And her parents aren't like aging out of it. So why pass the baton so early? And now the chief is entirely out the window, and her father has another title that he bestows upon her with Tautai Vasa. And I understand that things have changed, and now because they are Voyagers again, he does have the need for this department, we'll call it, I guess. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense that she would be heading this up. But this is where I wish we were able to build out their relationship a little bit more. And, you know, like I said, she has earned his respect. It would have been nice to see a conversation play out of, you know, I know that I needed you to be chief, but because so many things have changed, I feel like this will make you happier because you still get to voyage. But like, also maybe it would have been nice for him to plant the idea of you're going to need a crew, and you're going to have to find the best people for the job that can help you, instead of her having to randomly assemble people just to man the boat who have absolutely no skills to do it.
And characters, we don't know these characters either.
Thank you.
Like Strange World, which is a movie that was, I think, we've said it a few times over the course of the show, you know, since the film came out, unjustly crucified. But that movie does a really good job of introducing us to background characters, specifically as you're building a team for an expedition.
Yes.
That doesn't really happen here. That's where this feels like a television show.
That's exactly what I was going to say. The speed with which they select these people that are going on the voyage, it feels like a half-hour television show because we know nothing about them. I mean, we know that one can provide food, one can fix the boat. The other one, Braun, I guess he represents, but we really know nothing about them. And that could work in a world where they show their character because they want to go with her. Like, for example, in Pirates, and I know I have that movie on a pedestal, but, you know, it does it so well. When Jack is assembling his crew on Tortuga, they all sign up for it. We know very little bit about them, but we can see in their costumes kind of where they've been. That clues us in to who they are. And that's where, unfortunately, because this is an animation and you're trying to be culturally accurate as far as the costume design, you're losing that layer of storytelling to give us the background on these characters. So what we need is in the dialogue, them saying why they want to go, how they can be of service to Moana. And we don't get that at all because she's picking them. It would have flipped it. It would have given us so much more context if they were the ones who wanted to go with her. The only one that you kind of get that from a little bit is Moni. And I do like that he is keeping the history of their tribe alive with these drawings. Like, they did have a little bit of that in the first one, but I like that it gets expanded on here, and he's sort of he's like writing it as it happens. They try to play it for comedy a lot because he's always holding up these drawings at like the most inopportune moment when he should probably be doing something else, like steering the ship. But I wish that they had leaned into that a little bit more. And You know, it would have been funny to sort of see him drawing something as it was happening instead of like seconds after. But this is the most character development that we get for the new cast. And while I don't necessarily need a whole training montage before they take to the water, because they don't have these skills, they are working as antagonists to Moana. And okay, fine, you do need a little bit of conflict, but like they're so inept, and it's not playing for comedy either.
Let's also talk about what led to this. You have a power-hungry god that decides that for the sake of having almighty power, they are going to separate the people, cause a divide. I think that's great. I like the idea of it. But we don't get enough. I said it before. This is where it's television. You don't get nearly enough time with this character. The motivation makes sense. We need to see it. We need a great villain song. Neither one of these things happen. You get Maui. Maui's back. Maui's off pursuing Nalo because we had a fight once. Want to expand on that a little bit?
Yep. Yeah.
No? All right. That's fine. But now you have Maui, who went from being, I don't want to say inept in the first film, but having had a fall from grace and building his power back up. And you end up having this fight where you're effectively captured, not even by Nalo.
Right.
Very quickly. There's no great battle. You kind of snap your finger and it's over. I think that if this is the basis of what you wanted in the television show, that's fine. But I think if you're going to put it out in a movie theater, you've got to give it a little bit more pomp and circumstance. You need to give us a little bit more. And I think that very much feels a little thin.
Right, especially when you consider we got to see the whole story of Te Fiti play out, and it literally ushers us in the first movie because it's the grandmother telling the story, but we actually get to see it playing out in real time. So we're invested. And when you factor in how we meet Maui when he's a trickster, and we know that his ego was part of the motivation for stealing the heart, he becomes unreliable. You're not sure if Moana can trust him when they meet in the first one. And that's a great source of conflict. Here, he's a demigod. He's been alive for, he says 400 years or something like that. So I'll buy the notion of he's been creating mischief throughout these years. He's got a whole bunch of stories that we know nothing about. It's very Jack Sparrow in that way. We
Right.
know you've got a whole, list of complaints and trouble that you've left in your wake. So I will totally buy the notion that he's angered someone else. But to your point, it happens a little too quickly. We really, know nothing about this villain. Where the first movie leans so much into the spirituality of it all, I sort of bump on that this feels more supernatural than spiritual. So I think that was sort of a miss because you're really not tying it back to the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And what I also wish they had done, and this is something that I had sort of brought up in our first review. If you watch the first film through Maui's lens, where he's the protagonist and Moana is his antagonist, that's stopping him from or undoing his work and the way that he wanted to play things out, it does become a different movie. And I feel like that's something that could have also made for a stronger story in the first one, instead of focusing so much on Moana and giving her the I Want song and, keep rehashing the dialogue. I am Moana of Motunui. You will board my boat. Da, 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 da. I mean, it does lend to giving them more of an equal partnership in the first one. Here, this is Moana's movie. They really are making Maui the sidekick. And I sort of wish that they were on that level plane again, especially because when we see him this time, he's trying to protect her. I don't really know her. We're not that close. He doesn't want to let on because he doesn't want them going after her. So I like what that does for Maui and Moana's relationship. But as far as the stakes go, it feels like an exact copy of the first one in that Maui did something to separate Motunui from the rest of the islands. And the first time, I mean, part of the first one, it was her father's fault for not wanting her to go over the reef, but that had to do with something that Maui did. And here we are again. She's a wayfinder now. She wants to go to the other islands, but something that he did is stopping her from doing that. And this is where I also feel like it probably would have worked better as a TV series, because we are handcuffed by the fact that it is an island. There's only so many places you can go on the island. There are only so many places that you can go when you're traveling on the water. So I feel like if they had done this episodically, where each time she's visiting a new island and then meeting new people, and there's a conflict with those people, it would have worked better than an epic journey again, because there are not many ways that you can deviate from telling this story just simply because of the setting. This is one of those rare instances I feel like where setting is working against them.
Well, and then you meet this Matangi, right? And it's like, can we trust her? Is she a trickster? What's going on here?
I love her. And I love that about her. This was my favorite part of the movie, actually, because very similar to Maui, you're not sure if you can trust her.
And I wish that we would have had a little bit more time with her, because I agree with you. She's probably the best part of the movie. I wish we would have had more time with her. I wish that we would have questioned her for a lot longer. But it feels like you have a fleeting moment because it's a television episode. That's the thing.
Right.
It's a television episode. So you get a fleeting moment. You don't get enough time with her. You don't get enough conflict. She was set up to be a home run here.
Yeah. I mean, even with the animation too, the fact that they bothered to create someone who, well, I want to get your take on this. Is she like another demigod like Maui where she's in human form, or is she a person that was trapped? Like, that was something that I was sort of confused about, because in the first one, everybody that we meet except for Maui is a creature. Here we have a combination of creatures and people. And I mean, for as much as I love her animation and I love her being so bat-like, it was sort of jarring to meet another person on the way when part of your goal is to also meet the people of the islands, but she's not really of the islands. She's a supernatural character.
I felt like she was, I mean, like a henchwoman. I thought that she was human. Maybe Nalo had bestowed some power on her. Honestly, I thought this is going to be another Megara. That's sort of under the power of something larger.
Oh, good point.
And I think maybe that's what she was, but we just didn't explore it enough. Megara is the perfect example of a character like this that's made for a film.
Yeah.
Versus this character that is this way for a television show.
That's a really great comparison, though. I hadn't considered that at all.
I mean, the fact that you thought enough to give the Kakamora a stake in this, that you gave them a backstory that made a lot of sense.
They're kind of the Barbossa of this movie, right?
Right.
Now you got to work with them, which is, it's a sequel. It's a trope of a sequel where, you know, the enemy of your enemy becomes your friend and you have to work with them. And that's That's fine. And I do actually like that scene. I like the clam looking like an island with all the moss in it, and that's how they end up, through this portal, which sort of leads me to believe that she is just taking human form. But I don't know. It's kind of unclear. I'm sure we're gonna get it fleshed out in the third one though. Because they're gonna, spoiler alert, lean very heavy into that if you stayed after the credits.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I'm sort of bumping on here is, once they get out, Matangi helps them escape. So she sort of proves that, well, that's the thing. She's still untrustworthy. Even though she helps them, you do get the impression that it's for her own benefit. So you're still kind of on the fence about her. And I still do like that. She helps them. However, Ocean no longer does. And Ocean is a character in its own self. It's very prominent throughout the first one, but we don't get a reason why as to why it can't help out here anymore. And I mean, I guess the implication is because Nalo is the big bad and he's going to control it, but it just feels very forced. It feels convenient that they had to, at least they addressed it, that Ocean can't help them anymore, but it just kind of feels like Deus Ex Machina. It's very convenient.
So let's move on to the moment where everything feels like it's in despair. We're on this remote island. Moana's getting ready to quit. She's accepting defeat. And you needed a moment with Maui. I think you needed a moment where Maui opened up. And you got it. And it worked. I thought that it was necessary for that character. I felt that you needed to give him a little bit more skin in the game because, to your point that you made previously, they finished the first one as equal, and now he's kind of relegated to sidekick in this film. I think you needed a moment for him to be bumped up a little bit, and I liked that instead of just tearing her down and putting her on his level, you still found a way to raise him up and put him on her level and have there be a mutual respect there.
I totally agree. I think it's great for Maui, but I feel like it does regress Moana a little bit because understandably, they just hit a rough patch. She almost lost one of her inept crew. She's doubting herself. She's beating herself up, which is fine for the first one, or fine if you're a reluctant hero. She is neither. She was leading the charge in the first one. It's, I can do this. Maybe she questioned herself, but she ultimately believed that she could. Now you've been leading the charge with your inept crew. So I get that something horrible happened and you feel responsible, but feel bad about it. Sure. The self-doubt is the part that I'm not really buying, but I think to your point, it's because they had to write for Maui. I do like, though, in this scene that they call out Moana not being a princess.
Yes.
That it's a common misconception. A little fourth wall break. It was very cute.
A little self-aware, but yeah.
Yeah. I also love that, well, I mean, I love it and hate it at the same time because now the crew who has learned no skills whatsoever from their journey so far decides that they're going to rebuild the boat. But they do it with a piece of the ancestors' boat. I thought that was a really nice way to, not just honor the ancestors as far as the story, but I like that we got back to the culture of everything here. I feel like that's something that was sorely lacking in this movie, so I like the acknowledgement of it here. But then with no training, the crew knows how to sail in the clutch and knows to cut the mast. That was actually kind of cool, though.
Yeah.
As they're going into the storm, they decide to cut the mast and make it more of like a parachute so that they can go faster. This is once they realize that Nalo is not after Maui. He's after the humans to try and prevent them from touching the island. So Maui is going to forge ahead and pull the island up from the sea, and they're going to distract Nalo.
John Candy did it better when he took his pants off in Summer Rental. I'm just saying. I think the storm animation is unbelievable.
Oh my God, it's so good. All of it was like I said it before. I don't know how they managed to top themselves, but even, you know, when they're in the portal with the stars, it looks like they're sailing through the Milky Way. All of it gorgeous, and the storm was really great. Not just in the sky with the lightning, but how they churned up the sea. It was truly incredible. The sequence looks amazing, but then we get 2 fake out deaths, which I feel is one too many. And I'm not suggesting that I want to see a major character taken out, but you can't really do this with Maui because he's a demigod. I do like that they put him in peril, though. We see all of the tattoos fade, so you know that he's lost his power. I kind of wish that there was a transfer of power. Instead of doing a fake out death, it was that Maui realized that he had to sacrifice his power to save Moana. And I feel like that would have been the nice passing of the baton, instead of what we're getting, which is all of the ancestors come out. I guess, you know, it's to suggest that Moana is sort of caught in, not in limbo, but she's, you know, she's not alive, she's not dead. And then we see her own tattoos form. Because why? Because we needed to land this plane because we had a TV series written.
Well, here's the thing. I think that for a passing of the torch, for him to have passed his powers on to her, they could have done that in the first film. I think that if it was that easy, you would have undone a lot of what they did in the first movie if he could have done that the entire time. I also think that it would be sort of disrespectful to the demigods that they can just pass their powers back and forth as they please.
Fair.
I take this as she's dead. I don't think there's she's not dead, but she's not alive. I think she's dead. I think mortal Moana is gone. And the only way to bring her back was through the ancestors. She is no longer mortal. We know this. She is now a demigod reborn. I think Moana in mortal form has perished. I think that what we have now and what we will have moving forward is, as I said, it's the rebirth. It's the rising of a god.
I'll buy that, and I actually do like that. But I wish it was Ocean bestowing this power on her, because Ocean picked her. And I would buy it more because we do get this really beautiful moment with her grandmother where she says, "Together still, just a little different." And I think that's such a beautiful message about death, you know, to impart on younger kids that are watching this. But I feel like that doesn't support the idea of her being immortal. It kind of implies that, you know, we're on one plane and you're on the other. I feel like if she is a demigod, then she's going to be able to be more in touch with her ancestor side. So, I mean, I do agree with you. I like the idea that she is immortal now, but then maybe we shouldn't have had that beat with her grandmother, as nice as it is. I feel like it makes it more confusing when there was a clear path forward here.
Yeah. And then they go back to Montanui and the movie's over.
Well, no. They connect with the other islands at first.
Very quickly. That's the problem. You build up to this is the entire purpose of this journey, and then you rush through uniting them.
I mean, here's the thing. If they're trying to be culturally accurate, because all of these people lived on different islands, there were different languages. They, they weren't speaking the same language. They might have had different forms of writing. They really didn't have a way to communicate. So I feel like that's a lot to introduce in your final few minutes of the movie. So I kind of get why they didn't spend a lot of time there, and instead she brings them back to Montanui. And you get, the reuniting with her sister, who really looks up to her. But yeah, I mean, it being that this was the whole purpose of reuniting all of these islands, yeah, you kind of do want a little bit more. But don't worry, I'm sure we'll get it.
Yeah. Well, we perhaps wanted a little bit more. And sometimes, if you pay attention, there's a little bit more for you to find. Specifically in a sequel where there could be some Easter eggs buried. Where in the Film is brought to you by our friends at Where in the Park, a seek and find card game that you can play in your favorite parks. Whether it's Disney or Universal, SeaWorld or more, Where in the Park challenges you to spot those little details that so many can miss. To order your game packs, visit monoreelradio.com and click our affiliate link for a 10% discount today. I'm going to go ahead and let you go first today.
So not something that because there are no production again, animation stunning. You can't get better than this. But this was sort of like a fun little, we'll call it a cameo credit. Which oddly I didn't catch really any Easter eggs. I didn't even see a hidden Mickey. But the Moana bees, which I think is such a clever name. She's got this posse on Montanui that idol worships her, and they dress like her, and they have her hair like her, and they're fangirling all of the time. Dwayne Johnson had his kids voice them, so I thought that was fun.
I had the same thing actually.
Yeah, I mean, not a ton.
No, not a ton. Which is fine. I thought perhaps they would hide or bury a little bit more. At one point, if I'm being honest with you, because we were going into these other realms and we were going into clams that looked like islands, I kind of thought maybe we'd get a tie into Strange World, but we didn't.
Oh yeah.
But because that's very much what Strange World is. A missed opportunity, maybe, but that was basically, you had the same one that I had. But let's go ahead then and talk about our cast of new characters.
Can we do music first? Because I feel like that ties so closely to plot.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good idea.
Let's do music first. I also want to note, obviously, Lin-Manuel Miranda did the first one. They did not get him back for this for a couple of reasons. Probably because it was beneath him to work on a television show and he didn't want to do it, but also because he was working on Mufasa. Did he make the better choice? You'll find out when we review Mufasa, I suppose. So instead, who they did get is the writing duo Barlow and Bear, who, if you're not familiar, they wrote the doomed Bridgerton musical. And I remember they were one of the first viral videos that I stumbled across on TikTok in 2020 because Abigail Barlow's voice just captured me from the moment I heard it. And this was one of those things, much like Ratatouille, where it became such a collaborative effort because people were at home and they were bored and, they would post their work and one person would write a song and somebody else would add, whether it was instruments or they would do another song. It was a whole big community effort. It was a lot of fun. So they did this with Bridgerton. They got such a huge following. The cast of Bridgerton was doing reaction videos to it. This thing was so embraced, and then Netflix goes and they sue them for copyright infringement. Instead of saying, hey, you did an amazing thing, maybe we will make a musical out of this. The suit has since been dropped. There's not a lot of there's not a lot of details. Netflix just dropped it because I think because of the fan backlash, honestly, because people were so ready for this to be musical. So anyway, long story short, I was so thrilled to see these two girls who are insanely talented get their due and get a Disney credit under their belt. And I also really like that we have females writing for a female character. I think, especially because Moana is aging up, I think that that was important.
The first song is We're Back. This is way too self-aware. You may as well scream. You may as well have entitled the song, Welcome to the Sequel.
Yeah, I agree. You need a reset though, you know, and especially because they didn't bother to develop any of the secondary characters. Like, this is how they did it. This is how they got us caught up. I'm fine with seeing the island thriving now because it gives us confirmation that what she did worked in the first one, especially as it pertains to the farming. But this is where it would have been. We get more character development in the opening sequence of Beauty and the Beast, poor provincial town with the couple of people that say bonjour than we do here.
Beyond. Ali Cravalho slays this song.
Oh, so much.
But I immediately got the shiver up my spine when they had to end it on I am Moana. Like, why? Why did we need to do that again?
I mean, I get that we want to hear her hit that note, right? Like, if we saw Frozen and they didn't have Idina do the belt, we would be wanting for more. You could have had her do the belt on a different phrase.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, like, why would you want to? Because that was Lin-Manuel Miranda's writing. Wouldn't you want to do, you know, your own thing and give her her own statement this time around? Here's the one thing I take issue with. I think the animation is stunning in this sequence across the board. It feels like Into the Unknown in all of the right ways, not in a rip-offy ways. My one issue, and this is minutia, and I think this also has to do with the fact, you know, these songs are also the Band-Aids over the bullet wounds that are trying to piece all of the different episodes of television together. They lean on them heavy to do it. But anyway, my one issue with this song or this sequence, as much as I love it, is that they hold on one of her belts in close-up and you see like her lip quiver. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, I was like, why does this feel so off? I see what you're trying to do. I see that you're trying to make a very realistic animation here. But what I realized is that we never have animated characters belt in close-up. You always pull wide for the big money shot. This is the first time that they've ever tried something like this, to my knowledge. But I kind of think I'm right in my theory here because something about it feels clunky and awkward, and that's why. It's because we've never tried it before, and for good reason.
What could be better than this? It's a fun it's a fun little duet.
This is probably my favorite song in the film. I like the beat. I think it's catchy. I wish we had developed those secondary characters a little bit more here because they're still not learning anything about sailing. They're still falling over themselves. I really love how Moana sends a message back to her sister through the ocean in this one. I thought that was super cute.
Get lost. Honestly, I think this is my favorite song in the movie. I think the song is great. I love the animation. Like, as a whole, this is the one that I think is my personal favorite.
It's like a 1A, 1B for me. What would put this over the top is because I love Matangi as a character. This is the closest thing we have to a villain song, though.
Yeah, and that's a problem.
Yeah. But because it does have that feel of like an upbeat, like a paste, and it feels very much a little bit darker, but the lyrics are lighter, so it you can't go full villain with it. And because we don't know if she's full villain yet, like they are, it does a good job of still keeping us on our toes and reinforcing the idea of we don't know if we can trust her or not. But this is the closest thing that we're going to have to a tried and true villain song in this movie.
Can I get a Chi-Ho?
A Chi-Ho? Did you not listen?
Maui doesn't need songs. I'm convinced at this point, through 2 films, and it's no shade at Dwayne Johnson, he's a hell of a performer, but Maui doesn't need songs. This, to me, is and there's only, I mean, what were there, 4, 5? Not a ton of music, and that's okay. This is probably the weakest. We're Back is, I don't know, it's pretty heavy-handed. That's a 1A, 1B between the weakest. This one is just, it doesn't do it.
Here's the thing. I don't know if it's that Maui doesn't need because he's a sidekick. You need to give him a catchy song. I think catchphrases don't need full songs.
Yes.
I think that, for as much as I love Barlow and Bear, I feel like this is not their best showing. But I also feel like their hands were tied. It was, we need a song for Maui. So like, what are you going to do? I kind of wish and it would have lent to the idea of what we're saying as far as like Moana and Maui now being on an equal playing field. She's not trying to use him. He's not trying to use her. I wish we had more of a duet between the two of them.
Yeah, that would have worked. Are we ready to talk about our new cast members?
I do want to, yes. But before we get to the new ones, I enjoyed Maui so much more in this film. I think it was because they weren't leaning into him as the trickster character so much. And he had so many funny lines. I think it's worth noting where the farmer tells him that he looks like a kidney stone and he claps back with, you look like someone who knows what that is.
Yeah.
I thought that was hysterical. And that's, I think, what the first one was missing too. Those little winks and nods to the parents watching at home. Well, that Toy Story grown-up humor that they pepper in.
For what it's worth, and I know that there are people out there that watch pro wrestling, there are a lot that don't care for it at all. But take it from somebody who grew up, he wasn't Dwayne Johnson, he was The Rock.
Mm-hmm.
He's so quick-witted, and he's so good, especially with those, like, insult digs. They should have written to that more than they did, because Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, is legitimately funny. And I think that if you would write to that a little bit more, you would have a better character.
The most they have him do is continue to argue with the tattoo. But that was funny this time too. The tattoo gives him a purple nurple. It's hysterical. Like, yeah, I agree. I wish we had more of those moments. Like, let his personality come through a lot more.
All right, let's talk about some of these new characters, though. Ahimai Frazier plays Matangi. She's the best new character in the film. I wish that we would have seen more of her. Just repeat everything I said earlier.
They're clearly, with the after credits scene, setting up to do more with her in the third one. Spoiler alert, we're getting a third one. Yeah, she's a standout. Not in the sense of like she saved the film. She's just good on her own. She's a great Disney character. I wouldn't mind if we see her go full villain.
Hualile Chung plays Moni. I thought the comedy was quite good. The fanboying over Maui after a while becomes a bit much. I think that he works for what he is. I think we do get a full arc with him. When we get the third film, I just want to see them build on him more, because this film didn't do a good enough job building on the characters that we met in the first film. I think he, of all of them, is the one that you could do the most with in the third movie.
I would agree, especially with the fanboying. I think that was definitely trying to target the younger demographic watching, because they'll find that funny. But for me, it got real old real quick, especially because you could have utilized him so much more, because he is the brawn. Before Maui gets to the ship, he's steering it because he's the strongest one, and half the time he's away from his post drawing, which again could have been a lot funnier if timed out a little bit better. But what I do appreciate is that for as much in the beginning when we meet him as he's sort of fanboying over Moana 2, it never crossed the line of he's got a crush on her. There was never any romantic insinuation between the two of them. Like, do I think in the third one there might be room for that? Yeah, but I don't think that's where we need to take Moana's character right now. She's not a princess. This is not supposed to be a love story. So I do appreciate that they didn't use his character as a crutch for that.
Yeah. Rose Matafeo plays Lodo. I think that you could have done more with this character. She's background. I don't have much else to add. There's so much. There's such a good blueprint here for something.
Because you need her.
Yeah.
You need her to fix this. And the other thing, this is where it's a really missed opportunity. We're talking about a culture that existed thousands and thousands of years ago, when the role of a woman was to be a baby factory. So how did she get the knowledge and the know-how and the permission to learn how to construct these boats, especially in a society where the chief had taken all of them away? We get a little bit of a time jump in the beginning, but it doesn't make sense where she would have even been able to learn all of this stuff just on the premise, forget the cultural accuracy, just on the premise of the chief said no sailing. They have not had boats for a very long time. So, okay, you have to catch up quickly now that they're going to be wayfinding people again. But you didn't build this fleet of boats overnight. There's no way that she could have learned this.
David Fane plays Kele, the grumpy farmer. And, I thought that the character was good. I thought he did a good job with it. I'm sort of surprised Disney would have cast him. Yeah, Disney's very funny sometimes when they choose who and who they will not hitch their cart to when it comes to previous controversies. David Fane had gotten himself into a considerable amount of trouble about a decade ago for some very off-color things that he said during a roast. I won't get into it. You can Google it on your own. So I'm surprised that this is who they cast, but with that said, I thought for the very little dialogue and screen time that he had, I thought he did quite a good job with it.
For me, he felt very tropey. I'm fine with the curmudgeon character. I think that leaves room for a lot of humor. But because they literally kept putting him below deck, it started coming off as ageist. And it's like, why did you bring him out in the first place? I know he needs to feed you. But also did nothing with that skill. That's what I'm saying. All three were picked for different reasons, but we never, except for Lodo cutting the mast off, we don't get to see any of them actually utilize the skills that they were brought on this journey for.
Final thoughts on Moana 2. I'll go quick because I can be sort of short with this. I think that this movie has a clear beginning, middle, and end. I think this movie introduces us to some great ideas and some great conflicts. I think it lays the groundwork for some very interesting secondary characters. We've seen Disney do this before where a television series gets scrapped, but they've already put the time and money into it, so they just package it together as a film. Had this been 25 years ago, this would have been a straight-to-VHS release.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it feels. It feels like a straight-to-VHS release that became a billion-dollar box office hit because of its name. I don't think it's a bad film. I think that there's a lot of good here. But I think that had I not known what you told me before we sat to record this, I would have sat there and said, this is weak, and it was a cash grab. I think knowing what I know now, it works. If you would have put me down and said, we're binge watching Moana, I would have said, hey, that's a solid series. As a movie, yeah, all right. It feels like television. Do I think that this needs to be a trilogy? No. Are they gonna do it? Yeah. Even if we didn't have a post-credit scene, they'd announce the fourth film before they greenlit the third. That's just what's gonna happen. Because it has a $, it has a 1, and it's got a B following it. So until such time that number stops getting hit, they're gonna keep putting... There'll be 6 or 7 Frozen films by the time we're done. And I think the same thing's gonna happen with Toy Story, quite honestly. I don't know what else they're gonna do. I don't think you can rehash any of this. I think you can build on this. You can do a lot with culture and ancestors and gods and goddesses and nature. But I feel like by the time you do this the third time, it's gonna really feel retread. So, I said I was gonna be brief. That was a little bit longer than I thought, but that's sort of my final say on Moana 2.
No, I definitely agree with you. This one did surprise me in that it wasn't nearly as bad as I was expecting it to be based on some of the reviews I'd heard about it. And, you know, personal bias aside, as far as my feelings about the first one, I feel like I was able to watch this objectively without that weighing it down and just look at this as a standalone on its own. What I appreciate about it as far as a sequel goes is something that, I mean, I wasn't expecting to find, because it's something that we don't, I feel like we say very, very rarely now. What I appreciate about this one, and this is not something I thought I'd be saying because, you know, this is very rare these days, but here we are. What I appreciate about it is that it didn't rewrite the history of the first one. My issue is more that it felt so much like a retread of the first one, but this goes back to what I was talking about before, is that you are, pun intended, landlocked by this film. Just by virtue of it takes place on an island. So how much can you do that doesn't involve going on a journey across the water? And I think that's where this actually would have been way more successful as a television show. Because if you were doing it episodically, you could just isolate each episode. It doesn't necessarily have to be a continuation. It doesn't have to, you know, play out as a series. It could just be, you know, one island. She goes, she meets the people, there's conflict, or she helps them solve a problem. And then, you know, back to Montanui to take back what we learned. And then next episode, on to the next. Boom, boom, boom. And maybe, you know, you build eventually to Nalo in the finale of that season. And there is a way to tie it all together where these standalone episodes are able to be woven together. But how they tried to do that here and weave it together in a film, it just really didn't work. And I wish that they had left well enough alone and they left it as a TV series, because I think that would have been far more successful. And I think it would have been stronger.
We want to know what you have to say about Moana 2. You can let us know on all forms of social media at Monoreel Radio, or you can send us an email, monoreelradio@gmail.com. News of the week is coming up, but first a quick break.
News of the Week is proudly sponsored by KMV Travel. KMV Travel is a boutique travel agency that helps families plan personalized vacations and create unforgettable memories in the happiest place on earth. If you've dreamed of visiting Waltz Park or racing with Lightning McQueen in Cars Land, a KMV Travel specialist will work with you to customize the perfect getaway for you and your family. Your KMV Travel advisor will ensure you know the ins and outs of the My Disneyland app, assist with dining reservations, and of course, share their favorite hacks so you can get the most out of your vacation. Visit kmvtravel.com to soar over to California now.
If you're thinking of booking a trip to a Disney destination, you have to contact Jackie Zalezi. My husband and I recently celebrated our 10-year wedding anniversary and wanted to go on a trip, just the two of us. Jackie suggested Disneyland, knowing we'd never been and I had been dreaming of going. I am so thankful for her suggestion, as it was the most magical way to celebrate. Jackie got us a fantastic deal, but still constantly checked for discounts to make sure we were guaranteed the lowest price. Having recently visited Disneyland, she was a great source for helpful information and had suggestions for everything, including meals, Max Pass, even places to visit in Los Angeles on our non-park day. Upon arrival at our hotel, we experienced the easiest check-in because Jackie had taken care of everything. Throughout our trip, Jackie was in constant contact, making sure we had everything we needed and answering any questions we had. Our vacation was perfect.
The GO82 Lounge at Epcot is scheduled to open on June 4th of this year, with reservations starting on May the 6th. We have gotten a sneak preview of the all-around menu. We knew that this was going to be an adult-only lounge, but this certainly does look and feel very much like a sophisticated adult-only menu.
I'm pumped. Like, I was already pumped, but this stuff looks amazing.
Yeah. Some of the featured cocktails here, a caramelized leek martini, which is going to be gin-based. I don't think that, take it from somebody that's been in the food and beverage industry for 20 years, I'm getting a little tired of like everything needing to be infused with a vegetable or a leaf. So I don't know that leek and potato soup sounds great. I don't know if I need it in a martini, but sign me up for the brown butter old fashioned.
It looks so incredible.
It looks really good. Strawberry and coconut right hand. This is going to be Campari and coconut rum based. The clarified New York sour looks really, really good. The highbrow Batanga, which is a tequila-based drink. I already know what you will be having. The strawberry black pepper sour.
I know what you will not be having.
Yeah, more Campari. Electrons, which is a mezcal drink with cinnamon, lime, and carrot, and pink peppercorn. The peach shrub whiskey smash. The banana highball brulee. That sounds kind of exciting. And then they're going to have a exclusive bourbon flight. I'm not sure what makes this very exclusive because it's mostly larger brands that you can buy in the store, but I guess it's exclusive in that you'll only have this flight available at this particular lounge. And a couple of zero proofs, but nobody really wants to hear about those. Let's talk about the food offerings. This sort of took me by surprise. I knew that this was going to be very much a small bite menu. I think it's a little limited, in my opinion.
I mean, I don't necessarily mind that, though, because 9 times out of 10 when we're at Epcot, it's for a festival. So if I've been gorging on festival booths all day, I don't know that I'm going to need a huge plate after that.
Cannellini hummus, the chef's selection, which is a selection of artisanal cheeses, cured meats. It's a charcuterie board.
Mm-hmm.
Call it what it is.
That's fine.
Fungi flatbread. So it's basically a mushroom flatbread.
Oh, fungi. I thought you said fun guy. I was like, who's that named after?
Truffle, ahi tuna, and a jumbo lump crab appetizer as well. The souvenir glasses are absolutely stunning.
We have no room.
I know we have no room. However, call it what it is. When room eventually gets made as things run their course, these glasses, like if you would have told me, oh yeah, you buy these at Bed Bath & Beyond, they're $40 each, I'd be like, oh yeah, makes sense. I'd be interested to see what the price on them is going to be, but all in all, I'm not really jazzed on the food. There's basically no food here other than the charcuterie board that I'm going to eat, and if I'm going to have a charcuterie board, I'm going to go to Baseline Tap House. But for the cocktails alone and for the atmosphere at Epcot, and to get into some air conditioning, I think this is a place that I'm super excited for.
I mean, I've been excited about it, but this is the thing. It's an adults-only lounge. All you need is a little nosh while you're sipping your drink. It doesn't have to be a crazy elaborate menu. And I believe they are doing fireworks viewing packages there. So I'm sure that menu will be a little bit more enhanced. But I think also the idea is that during the day, they're going to try and move people through here. Like, this is going to be a limited space. You kind of have to, because then it's going to turn into Trader Sam's, where it's going to be a 3-hour virtual queue and you're not going to be able to get in there and time out your day or just roll up for a drink whenever you want. I think the idea is that they have to keep people moving through it. So for that, I think the menu's, it's a smart way to go about it. And also, it also lends to the fact that none of this requires intense preparation. So you won't be sitting at a table that long. This is about turnover, really. Mr. Food and Beverage, I'm surprised you didn't pick up on that.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us this and every week on Monoreel Radio. Monoreel Radio will always be free, but there are many ways that you can help support the show. Please give us a rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. Join the conversation on social media at Monoreel Radio on all major platforms. Share your favorite episodes with family and friends who may enjoy them. And of course, book your next trip with Jackie. Links to everything can be found at monoreelradio.com. We all get one story. Make yours a magical one.
On behalf of Monoreel Radio, we'd like to thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the movies, the stuff dreams are made of.